Ah, the great Canadian wilderness. Breathtaking, serene, and quickly depleting as a direct result of human actions. Hello, I am not Bonnie, but I am reading a script she wrote, and I have a soothing, more academic voice. Today we will go on a journey through trends in extinction risk for imperiled species in Canada. When species are recognized as being in danger of extinction, they are put under notice and put under government protection. This study looked at progress of species that were put under these protections. The process of being recognized runs thus. First, the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada, an independent body, assesses a species' risk of extinction and places it on a scale. The scale goes not at risk, special concern, threatened, endangered, and extinct or extirpated. Then we move over to this piece of paper. Species who are deemed by the aforementioned committee as being at risk of extinction are brought to our very own Minister of the Environment, who makes a less independent decision as to whether or not they agree that a species is at the level of risk the committee has placed it at, or if more information is needed. Ultimately, approval should mean that a species will receive the protections of the Species at Risk Act, theoretically. At least one would think. Conservation programs such as this are needed desperately, as the global extinction rate is 1,000 times its historic rate. In America, there is a strong correlation between recovery of a species and years it's been under government protection, indicating that endangered species legislation can be effective. Not that you'd know it by our success. Looking at the change in the status of species over its time under protection, this study found that species did not improve in their ranking. Most species didn't change in ranking at all, and species of special concern actually had their situation deteriorate. Actions taken in relation to that category are so lacking that they can't even keep the species in limbo. Only 20 species were actually ruled as being not at risk after being listed, and 5 of these cases were not due to conservation action, but were instead due to increased sampling effort. Species that declined outweighed species that improved 2 to 1. So, what is it that we seem to be doing so incredibly wrong? Economic and social issues are often prioritized over species conservation. Species that have become threatened because of their use as a biological resource often don't find their protections fully implemented. The protections are also implemented poorly, as the government doesn't always act within its specified timeframes. Additionally, species with a lack of information are ignored entirely. This doesn't exactly have to do with the state of already listed animals, but it's still pretty bogus, man. Alright, it's all awful. But why should we care? What makes it so important? How is this meant to keep us up at night, staring into the endless expanse of the void, thinking about how powerless we are in the face of it all? Well, it should be noted that not at risk does not mean that the species is back to its historic numbers, only that it is no longer at risk of completely disappearing. So they may no longer be at risk of extinction, but they're not at a point where they can play their traditional role in the ecosystem. We may not lose the species yet, but the larger picture of biodiversity and their ecosystems have still not been repaired. And presently, we're not even managing to get species to the point to being the bare minimum of not at risk. The study suggests 3 solutions. Since it was much more common for a species of special concern to deteriorate than to improve, we should take a special concern listing as a sign of coming deterioration. Therefore, protections associated with this listing need to be strengthened. Second, given the poor outcomes of at-risk species in Canada, there should be a focus on preventing species from becoming at risk in the first place. There is a strong importance of crucial to species survival, so future legislation could make habitat conservation a priority. Further, any legislative changes that might reduce habitat protection should be reconsidered. forgotten about entirely works equally well. Third, to experience conservation benefits from the Species at Risk Act, it must be fully implemented. The federal government should also be prepared to step in and take over conservation efforts if the provinces cannot manage. It concludes that the government just needs to chill, alright? Even if these recommendations were accepted and put into effect, recovery takes time. Effective management requires that conservation measures be sustained over the long term, even if positive outcomes are not immediately observed. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Canada's failed implementation legislature.